Okay, a little bit about dealing with some features on antique flutes, and this can apply to other instruments and instances as well. Oboes comes to mind, but quite common on simple system flutes of a certain quality level. They will have sockets sometimes lined with metal. Most of the time this ends up being around the barrels, but this particular one, all the joints, all the sockets have a metal lining. And they're fit really well and they're shellacked in place. And the problem here is we've got some cracks where the wood has shrunk around the metal didn't give, so the wood cracked. If you have the ability, you want to yank that liner before you fix the cracks. You want to fix the cracks, then rebore it and put the liner back in whenever possible, in my opinion. So how do you do that? Well, I will show you how you do that. This is the tool that I have made for removing that liner. This is a brass plumbing fitting. Started off something like that, stuck it in the lathe and turned it down to the diameter I need. This is one that I used a few minutes ago on another joint. The diameter here is about 2/1000 smaller than the diameter of the liner. So it's just a nice sliding fit, and that is to accommodate room for the solder. I'm going to solder this into place here. I'm not going to put any solder in here directly. I'm going to flux that up real good, but all the solder is going to be on here. I'm going to heat that up real good, slide that on. The residual heat, long after the solder has solidified, will melt the shellac, and this will just slide off. And if I do it right, I'll just have a little bit of solder cleanup at the top edge, which should be no big deal. This is soldering, although it sounds extreme. If you think about it, you have a hot melt glue in here. You have to get this hot to get that out. You don't have anyone to grab onto that. A lot of people will use super glue. Well, guess what releases super glue? Heat. And I don't want to have to do this over and over and over again, and the super glue keeps breaking and making a mess of things, when I can do it real quick in one shot with the solder, and it will clean up just fine, and you'll never know it was there. The other good thing about these plumbing fittings, rather than just taking a chunk of brass and doing this, is it already has a hole through it. I don't have to worry about that waste. And this is important for the heating process, because I can heat it from the middle, get the whole thing hot rather than just one side hot, because the brass is going to suck up a lot of heat, and we want it to get up to temperature fairly quickly, although time doesn't really matter, but we want it to be uniform. And you can use whatever solder you're comfortable with. The one that I happened to pick up that was on top of the pile is a 94.6, 94% tin, 6% silver solder, and that's the highest temp soft solder I've got. So It doesn't need to be that high because shellac doesn't melt. It'll pretty much be melted by the time you get to 200 degrees or so. And this stuff is going to be up around 500. And I'm just going to put a little bit of solder at the very top edge there. I've machined this little shelf as a stop, and we're not hot enough yet, so we'll heat this up some more. And when I machined this, I machined some grooves in there to hold solder. The larger one that I made over here still has some residual threads on it that does the same job. People have heard me joke about soldering, the bigger the blob, the better the job, but you really don't want a big blob on this. You just want enough to hold on. And I've got some impurities on there. And get some more flux. Solder's all balling up and not flowing. So you can probably see that solder has flowed all the way around and we don't have really big blob anywhere. And that's plenty hot. So I'm going to just slide this on there. And with luck, well, you can probably see the crack expanding from the heat. Crack going right through this post hole here. And I'm going to hold it there until I think it's the solder is solidified. It has not solidified, it's still wiggling. I might have to do this again. There was a little bit of impurity in that solder and it might not bond here. Yeah, I'm gonna have to do that again, so stand by. Probably going to give this a wipe too. That brass really soaks up a lot. There we go. That's a nice shiny surface that I like to see. Charge this up just a little bit more. And I'll try this again. And there you go. That's the liner.